Today's topic was following on from what we've been talking about earlier on in the week, which is making sure that we're aware that there's many factors that we can have that can influence our back pain. It's one of the big things, and the big thing that changes our clients, and also the big thing that gets them results, is that you may have pain, you may have a disc problem, you may have an issue where your facet joints are tight, or you've had an injury, or you've had trauma, but there's a whole heap of other things that overlay on top that can give you good results or can not get you as good results as you would like. And one of those is flexibility. What is flexibility? Most of us, as we get older, our joints get a little bit more stiff. We tend to have a little bit of an issue where we're not as bendy as we used to be, and especially if we are in a sedentary job. So, if you've been sporty and you've been active and you've always done something exercise-wise most of your life, you generally tend to carry that thesis through, or carry that on and carry that through into adulthood and obviously middle age and later in life, especially if you are adhering to that more sort of healthy lifestyle. And generally that's one of the good benchmarks for us, I suppose. If people are used to exercise and they're used to moving, and then suddenly they can't do it anymore, they'll generally want to try and do something about it. The people who are moving and exercising are probably going to be a little bit obviously stronger, a bit more toned, have a little bit more exercise tolerance, and also just have that little bit more flexibility because they're moving and their joints are getting moved. And it is a kind of use it or lose it. If you're not doing stuff, then obviously there's no reason for you to move your joints. There's no reason for you to use your muscles. And then what happens with that is that the tissues obviously degrade. That doesn't mean they sort of wither away and degenerate, but it does mean that they're not as supple as they used to be. They're not getting used. So it's a bit like lack of tone and lack of strength, and of course lack of flexibility. So when you do start trying to move, your joints are stiff, they're tight, your muscles are weak, it takes a little bit longer to get moving. If you layer on top of that, if you are sore and you've had an injury, or you've hurt your spine, or you've pulled something, or you've decided one day you're going to go out and do the garden, it looks great, and so you'll take advantage of the weather and go out and do 2, 3, 4 hours of gardening, and then find you can't move for 2 or 3 days. It could just be that you've overdone something, you've overused muscles and stuff that haven't really done anything for a while, and it's just what we call sort of an overuse injury. Settles down quite quickly. The problem being if you've obviously overdone something and caused some damage, and that could be that you've overused your soft tissue and they're traumatized a little bit, you've got a bit of a muscle strain, or you've pulled a ligament, or you've overloaded it. So, similar to athletes who are training for a marathon, the more that they're doing, the more they have to step up, and as they step up, the body can't cope with that stress level. And then they get injured that way. Very, very similar, but at the other end of the scale, where you've done not a lot and you're trying to do something and your body goes, yeah, not having any of that. So how does flexibility play into that? So if I just grab my spine again and just take a couple of steps backwards, so hopefully you can see. So if my spine here, or if I turn myself side on, if I've got a spine that can move and it can bend this way, and then my spine can bend this way, if I am injured, I might find that I can only get to here. So what's happened is these muscles here are a little bit tighter, and they're not letting me move all the way down here. Okay, now I have quite long hamstrings, so if my back is stiff, I can still move, I can still bend, and you can see my back is still straight, and then I can bend from my spine to get more range. Now if I am tight in my hamstrings, that might stop me because I don't have the length in my hamstrings letting me then move forward. So tightness and lack of flexibility can play forth in a few different ways. So this is obviously your pelvis. And at the end of your pelvis, you've got your sit bones where you sit. So if you pop your hands into your bottom, you basically sit on your sit bones. You've got your hip joints that go into the pelvis at the front. And then with these hips, obviously you've got your hamstrings, which are the muscles that attach to the back of the leg. Now, if my muscle that's attaching, I'll move myself a little bit further away again, if my muscle that is attaching to the back of my leg here, here at the bottom, so it attaches just behind the knee and then attaches just above the butt cheek here. Now, if that muscle is nice and long, it's going to let me move. It's going to let me stretch it. When I bring my leg forward, it's going to let me move. Now, if that muscle is tight, what it does is it pulls my pelvis down. So this muscle is pulling it this way. And then when I try and move, I don't have as much range as I would do because the hamstring is causing me to stay stuck. So the aim then is to lengthen the hamstring so I have more range here so that I can then stretch again. Okay, so we can cheat and we can compensate. You'll see my spine here to here really doesn't move at all. So when I bend forward, I don't have that much range in my lower back. Most of my range is in my upper back. That's my lower back, and the rest of my range is my hamstrings. Coming back up, that's my hamstrings, that's my lower back, and the rest of it is my upper back. Now, if I was nice and bendy, I would go from here. Then I would have a lot more range to be able to take me over before my hamstring starts to move. So we can see that if we are a little bit tighter, it changes our flexibility. Now, if my hamstrings are pulling me this way, so my hamstrings are attaching here and they're tight. So if I make that hamstring tight, it's pulling my pelvis underneath me. I'm also creating pressure through my lower back, and my lower back is getting pulled this way. And we see this all the time with children who are now sitting very, very tight and very, very stuck in a C-curve spine. So they're basically sitting on their pelvis and they're sitting with a spine that bends that way. Now what's happening there is that their long muscles of their spine, which go from the base of the head to the tailbone here, they should be nice and here. And then, so that's my normal length here, they're permanently stretched, okay? So the muscles in the lower spine and the upper spine and up into the neck, instead of being able to work in their range where they are here and being able to function to come into that position, are permanently on a stretch, okay? Now, if this is my abdominal muscles and my hip flexor muscles, which attach under my spine, just basically at the top of my lumbar, so lower rib cage. So you can imagine they're attaching here and they sit in front of my spine and they go through to attach onto my hip. And then when I want to move my leg up, that muscle contracts and it pulls my leg up. That's what's happening. Okay, there's another muscle that comes in at the side here, and between the two of them, that's what they do. It's your psoas muscle and your iliacus muscle, and they join together to call the iliopsoas, which is your hip flexor. So from attachment here, they pull in. Okay, so that's my hip flexor. It's nice and long if I'm here to here. Now, if I'm sat all day, this bit is getting tight. So I'm sat all day. I'm not getting a stretch into that position here. So when I get up, I might go, oh, that feels a bit tight. Okay. Now if I'm sat all day and this is getting tight, this is pulling my hip this way, my hamstrings are also tight, they're pulling this way, which then means my upper back muscles and these muscles are all nice and long to accommodate that. So now I've got hip flexors that are tight at the hip, and I've got hip flexors that are tight because they're just static. Now, if I'm in a curly back position here, they're shorter again. Okay, so if we look at that in an analogy point of view of this muscle and these here, I might just shorten my strap so they're both the same length. So my abs are here, my back muscles are here, relatively where they should be. If I'm in a curly back position like this, my muscles here are long and this muscle relatively is short. So that makes the disparity here to here. So when I'm trying to move, I've got this muscle that's tight trying to move against this muscle which is long. This muscle's long and it's also weak because it's just hanging and it's fighting against this muscle which is short. So when we try and use it and we try and stretch this muscle is short here and it's going, I can't do that, I don't want to do that. This muscle is already long because we're already in a curl and we're already on a stretch with our hamstring. And then it's got nothing left to give because it's already stretched. Our joints are already in flexion and our hamstrings are tight, so we've got nothing left there. So we're already stiff and tight. So what it's doing is it's creating a culture in our spine where we're on the extremes of our range. Some muscles are working and they're working way out here at length and they're just hanging on, trying to hold us still. And other muscles here, they're just tight and we're trying to stretch them, but they don't have any range. So you can see that if you have a problem where you are seated all day and you're sat in that position all day and then you stay curled and then you go home and you're sitting in a car or you're sat on the couch and you're not doing stuff that would take you out of that position. So, your netballers, your basketball players who are up here, but then also spend quite a long time down here, then again, quite a lot of range. So sports that take you into the exact opposite of that. So, your swimmers, anything that goes the other way, away from that curling position, is going to give you something that then stretches you. Okay. Now the downfalls of something here that's tight means that the tissues become accommodated to that. So what happens is they are tight and they're short. So they don't let you move. So that's what happens when we say it's a postural dysfunction and they don't let you move. So they're stuck here and you physically can't lean back because there's nothing left. Or you try and lie on your tummy and your hips come up, or you're lying on your tummy, you're trying to lift the leg off the bed at the back. But all that happens is your back moves because this isn't long enough to hold you and your hamstrings and your glutes aren't strong enough to stabilize and lift at the same time. So like I was saying, now we have 2 or 3 different things that are causing an issue. We have tissues that are tight, so your muscles have lost their flexibility. Muscles that are working on a stretch, which are also weak because they're just hanging on, and muscles that are short because they've now become compact and they've not been stretched for such a long time that they've accommodated to that. So if you think, when you're little and you could go and you could touch your toes, or when you're little and you could go and you could do splits, and then you try and do it now and it's like, oh, that hurts, can't do that, can't get my hand here anymore, can't reach behind my back anymore, you can't do the fingers that you used to be able to do, and it's all because of tightness and changes in your tissues, and we don't generally notice it's a problem until it becomes a problem. So I'm quite tight through my arm and I find it difficult to reach up, and I've got very, very tight pecs. I've had some quite major surgery, so when I'm trying to reach, it actually really hurts, and I've lost that range, and I've lost range into here. So for me to be able to do that, to reach behind, I actually have to arch. So I'm not using stretch in my triceps because my triceps are tight. I'm actually using stretch here. So for me, when I'm trying to do my hair in my bun or trying to put I have to make a conscious effort to lean forward to do it this way. Otherwise, I do it that way, and I wonder why my back gets sore. So it's about being aware of what's going on. It's about being aware that if we are stiff in certain areas and we do have tightness through these muscles here, it's going to pull us into that position. Now, if you overlay onto that a lot of people, and most of us know, look, we need to gain flexibility, we need to gain core strength. If you think that you have your tissue here to here that is tight and it's working into that tightened position, and then you think, I need to strengthen my core, and then you go and do more, you tighten it further, but it's not solving your problem, it's actually making your problem worse. So the first thing would be that we need to stretch and get in and get some release. So we're talking our deep abdominals, we're talking our diaphragm, we're talking our psoas, we're talking our iliacus, so our iliopsoas muscle. We'll probably have some tightness through our obliques as well, but definitely through our diaphragm because it's not being expanded, it's been in that curled position. Obviously our pecs, if our pecs are tight, they're pulling us this way, which is creating that curve. That pulls our neck forward, which you talked about in posture. So now we've got not just a core that we want to get strong, we've got a core that we want to get stronger, but by physically making it stronger in that zone, in that position, and not addressing other things, it will make the rest of it potentially worse. So it's one of those hard little things that, you do need to be on the right track. That, lots of people say, but I've tried physio and I've tried core strength and I've tried this and I've tried stretching and I've tried X, Y, and Z. And it's absolutely great that you have tried all of these things. The problem is that if you've tried all of these things, but you haven't had a strategy behind it, then it's not going to help you. So if you've tried to do things like your abdominal crunches, but you've actually been crunching and compressing, you're creating compressive forces. If you haven't got a stretch, then you're not able to then move. If you have a spine here that's been curled in that position, and then you're trying to work it to hold you in this position, if you haven't got the range in your pelvis because your hamstrings are always tight, then you're not going to have the range in your pelvis to allow you to sit neutral, which then allows you to move this on top. So it's starting with what is the most important thing. If you are tight in your hamstrings and you're trying to do this, you're just hinging backwards, which we talked about yesterday. Then you've got a hinge, not a lordosis. Okay? If you haven't got the range to get from flexion into neutral first, that's going to be your first thing that you need to be able to work on. And this, like I said before, is when most people get unstuck. This is when most people are having a problem. So what we're trying to achieve is, as you're getting some flexibility and as you're improving your movement, you want to make sure that you're doing it through the right tissues in the right way, and make sure that as you stretch and as you gain improvement, those tissues are tight for a reason. Your hamstrings are tight for a reason. Your abs are tight for a reason. And if you release that tightness, which is giving you stability, but then you don't replace it with what it needs, then you'll always come back to that. And that's when people say they feel better, but it gets tight again. It feels better, it gets tight again. The same things that happen when people do the foam roller releases. They're releasing their quads and their glutes and their releases through the side of the leg and the side of the quads, but they're not then replacing it. So if my glutes are weak and my quads are taking over and my hip flexors are taking over, they're getting tight and I'm doing my releases and they're feeling better, but then I'm not changing anything about what's being used to replace it with something else that will stop those muscles getting tight. So hopefully that's given a bit of insight into how having low or less flexibility in your spine, or less flexibility in your legs, or less flexibility in whatever joints or hamstrings that are occurring can play into how it affects your back pain. Tomorrow we're going to talk about core strength and how that can affect back pain. So you can join me for tomorrow. We'll have maybe 20 minutes or so again tomorrow, hopefully around about midday for you, and we'll chat again. Thanks for joining me.